Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Uncorked with Funny Wine Girl. This is Funny Wine Girl, aka Janine Luby, and we are rolling through January. I cannot believe this is, this is the fourth week already of the podcast. It's insane how quickly we're moving, and I guess as we get older, it feels like time moves more quickly. But I cannot wait to bring you this week's episode because it is serial guest. No, it's not Oliver again. I know you just heard from him like the end of the year. We were doing our reflections. Don't worry, he'll be back very soon. And I'm so excited that I'm looking at flights to go visit him in May. And I just can't wait because I love to be treated, as he said, like the queen that I am. Anyway, it's my other favorite serial guest that is joining me this week. It is Pittsburgh-based comedian, mental health advocate, and amazing human being, Gab Bonesso. Welcome, Gab, again.
Hi. I'm so glad to be back. Hi, Janine. Hi, Oliver, if you're listening.
If he's listening, I know he's going to be like, yeah, shout out. He sends me critiques every week. And critique is like a harsh word because they're always great comments. So I am thrilled. And he genuinely listens and points out what he learns from different guests. So I love the feedback. It's great.
Well, I love the episode with the two of you at the end of the year. That was like, I watched it on YouTube and I really enjoyed it.
Well, I'm glad you did, because sometimes with him and I, we could go on forever. And I'm like, I don't know if anybody's listening. And by the end, I'm like, I have no idea if anyone made it this far, but God love them if they did.
I made it the whole way. And I always do YouTube. I'm much more of a YouTube person. I don't know why.
That's cool. You do you. And I mean, and so you're like, I get like 1 or 2 views on YouTube. So you're one of them. That's good to know.
That's me.
That's good to know.
Because I always notice that I'm like, does she know it's me? Because I'm such the YouTube person.
Hey, that's great. A visual. It's nice to put the face, and to see us. Yeah. So I have to say, Happy New Year. We're just talking. Actually, we had a meeting on Zoom after the first of the year. So I've seen you technically. And I will mention that I think I've said this before. I have never met Gab in person, although I feel like I have. I feel like we have, because I met her on Zoom like maybe 2 years ago, and I feel like I've known her forever. So even though I'll admit I can be critical where I'm like, social media, you don't really know the person, but we've been on Zoom and podcast recordings, conversations. I feel like I've known you forever.
Ditto. I really do. And we have like deep conversations. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like we've definitely made it to that friendship zone where it's like, okay, we don't really know each other in real life, but we do, because we talk about our families and our mental health and the real important stuff,
Yeah, totally. So with that, I'm going to go right into the most exciting thing that I want to share is that we will finally get to meet in person, because now all my Northeastern Pennsylvania peeps, listen up. I want you to look at your smartphones. If you're old school like me, you do smartphone and paper calendar, get them out, because Gab Bonesso is coming to Scranton in May. She will be here May 4th and 5th. She'll be doing some programs during the day with NEPA regional chapter of NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness. And May 5th, mark this down, in the evening in downtown Scranton, most likely. I won't give that away just yet, but it's looking like downtown Scranton, May 5th, comedy show, fundraiser for NAMI of NEPA, and basket raffles for a humor therapy fund. Gab will be performing. So you have to mark that down. Are you excited? I'm excited.
Oh my God. I just know, because first of all, because you're the Electric City, and because like my whole brand is mania, like I just know I'm going to take it to like this next level. Like I really feel like people are going to think I'm on Red Bull, and it's just going to be like, I'm going to be so electric at the show. Like I'm so excited. And it's been like a long time coming. You know what I mean? Because I feel like I did that NAMI Zoom back in like spring of 2021. It may have been 2021. I don't know. Could have still been 2020. It's all such a blur.
I feel like it was 2020, but I'm not sure. You're right. Yeah.
And so like, I just feel like I've like, fostered relationships with that side of it. And I've been wanting to come, and I'm just, thank you for all your work you've done to make this happen. And I will not let you down.
Oh, I'm not worried about that at all. Just because and again, not because I know you, but I feel like I know you well enough to know, I know your passion. I know your talent, and so I know you're not going to let anyone down. And I should give a little plug here. Let me explain in part how we're getting Gab here. One of the things that I'm sure I've talked about on the show, and if you follow me ever and look on my Facebook or my Instagram, when I was working for Blue Cross in healthcare communications, I was fortunate to get tuition reimbursement. So I went to Marywood, the local university in Scranton, for my master's degree. Took 6 years, did it one class at a time. And at the end, I worked on a project where I worked with the Scranton Area Foundation, which is a wonderful organization in Scranton that helps out the greater Northeastern Pennsylvania. And we worked on a fund, and it was actually set up to be a one-time fund. And God rest her soul, she has passed on. Jean Bavard was the then executive director of Scranton Area Foundation. And I was probably a pill to work with because I can be a pain in the ass. And I was like, I need to do this. I want to do this. And she's like, well, I think we can do it, Janine, but I'm not sure. I was getting a little grumpy, and she was a saint, let me tell you. And we made this happen. And it was a one-time thing. I did a fundraiser at Marywood as a project for a grade. And then there was money left over. And she said, do you want to keep this going? And I said, yes, if we can, let's keep it going. So it's what's called a donor advised fund. So I raised the money for it ever since 2006. And finally, it took a while because with these things, and I don't know the ins and outs exactly, it's got to have a certain amount of money, and it starts to make money from interest that you can start to give little grants out, disperse annual grants. And so the way that this works is, the way I have it written is that annually we will disperse a grant to a nonprofit in the greater Scranton area. But the caveat is you have to submit a proposal and you have to have a plan for the money that is involving humor therapy or laughter therapy. So, I mean, you know, and I understand every nonprofit needs money, and I'm the person that gets to approve or reject, so to speak, the applications. And I see a lot of good organizations, but it has to be a specific plan to use humor and or laughter to help people feel better. And that is how, in part, we're getting to bring Gab here. NAMI submitted an application. I said, this is fantastic. Gab will come and she will talk to, and we're still working out specifics, but she will be in the community talking to folks, sharing her story, helping them telling her story of her mental health journey using humor, and just helping people feel lighter and brighter. And I know she'll do that. And then in the evening, we get to have this amazing show that will be a fundraiser for NAMI in part. And then with the basket raffles, we can also raise some money for the humor therapy fund. So it's going to be fabulous every single way around. And I will stop talking now and just say, give us an idea. And I know you don't know all the specifics, Gab, but for people who may not have heard you before on my show, your story, we've shared some of that before, but so you go out, you do all kinds of things. You've done shows for kids, you do comedy in the evening for like at clubs, but you also have been on the circuit, so to speak, presenting about your mental health story.
Yeah, that's really been interesting. I would say I've been doing that, the storytelling or the mental health speaking, for probably like 6 years now, but the pandemic like kind of took it off because it was the one medium that made sense to do over Zoom. Like comedy is hellish to do over Zoom, but like if I'm telling my story and then peppering in jokes, that's a little bit more doable via Zoom. And then I could do the children's performing, but it's still not the same thing because it's a music show. So the music just doesn't live up to, over a computer. But yeah, I mean, it's wild. I never intended on this. Like I've always said, like I just was doing stand-up comedy. I was talking about having bipolar disorder because I had just been diagnosed with bipolar 1. I mean, it was this major diagnosis. I'm in my 20s. I'm just trying to like figure it out. And so the way I figure out everything is through my art and on stage. And I just started talking about it. And the next thing I know, people are like, hey, you're a mental health advocate. And I'm like, I am. I'm a lunatic. Okay. And it just kind of snowballed from there. And then when I started doing the children's stuff, and that became very motivational, and like where I could not swear and stay controlled and, do these shows that have a lot of pressure on them, that easily segued into, well, wait a minute, I can do that by myself just with my mental health and go to grownups and do it. So it's sort of, but I don't think I would have ever had the faith in being a public speaker had I not done it for children in schools where it's very serious and you have to educate them, because an assembly program, there has to be some educational factor to it, or they're not going to probably bring you in. And I think that really helped me develop my voice for what I do. now. And it is still scary. I'm not going to lie. Like I have these moments where like, because every client is different, like some clients would never want you to go into the specifics of your trauma. Whereas another client would be like, no, tell the specifics of all of your trauma. And that like, after an hour and a half of revealing all of that, I'm like, oh my God, like I just like need to go hide under a blanket and like, just like meditate. It's rough, So yeah, it's really interesting. And I love every little aspect of what I get to do and figure out a way to perform, because that's where I feel the most alive. So
You made a really important point there. And so two things I want to say. One, you have to, the client has to tell you, obviously, right? Because you're not a mind reader. So you wouldn't know like, okay, I'm telling too much. You don't know that unless they tell you up front. But your other point is interesting that like you said, then you have to go like hide under a blanket, because are you kind of almost like, not everyone would be willing or able maybe even to do what you're doing, because it's almost like some of it is almost reliving it, or it is certainly a lot of energy and a little bit tiring, I would think, coming out of you to be sharing all that stuff.
oh, definitely. Yeah, sometimes like, and yeah, sometimes it is like a little rough. Like, I've been thinking of one in particular where they wanted me to present for an hour and a half, and they were very specific about talking about my traumas. And like my initial trauma that led me into this wonderful world of mental health is rough. It's something that's no one wants to talk about. You know what I mean? It's really rough. So then you talk about it, and then you give them 30 minutes of Q&A where people are like, hey, you specifically said this one thing. And it's like, oh boy, now that's all you guys want to talk about, and then that's like, you feel under pressure. And yeah, like there've been anxious moments for me as the presenter too, just, and it always cracks me up too, because I always love to start every one by saying like, just because I'm presenting to you and talking about my mental health, one, I am not a psychiatrist, psychologist. I cannot prescribe medicine. I cannot give advice that way. Second of all, even though I'm presenting and talking about it, I'm not cured. I still have all of the symptoms. Before coming here today, I ripped a sweater off my body because I was in a mental meltdown. And now I'm here, but like, I don't know if people ever take me seriously. Like I'm like, I sometimes think people are like, oh, Gab, she talks about it, but they don't like fully get it. And I just feel like, oh my God, if you people could be a fly on my wall, I just feel like you'd be like, oh no, Gab's crazy. Gab's actually mentally has some issues, but yeah. But overall, it's wonderful. And for the most part, most clients don't make you dig that deep. You know what I mean? They're like, oh no, just say you have trauma and move on from it. Or, it's very rare the one that's like, yes, we need to know what happened to you. And it's like, no.
I would think for most clients it's probably, and I don't mean to say good enough, but like enough for you to not have to dig that deep, because ultimately your trauma is yours and it's personal. Granted, somebody else might have something similar, but really when it comes to mental health issues, I mean, right now, so many people are going through so much that just even talking about it is so important. It's a great start. And, depending again on the audience, are you at a mental health, like when you come here in May, we'll figure out what's the audience. Is it going to be an audience that's already in counseling? Is it a general public audience? And obviously that's when either the client needs to tell you, or I'm sure you use, your own judgment, which makes sense. And then obviously for kids, it's a different way. We talk, I think we talked before I hit the record button, the language you use, the examples you use, things like that are going to have to alter or be a little different.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Because when you're talking about like, especially with presenting to kids, I feel like so much of my trauma did happen in childhood. And then I didn't have the resources to help myself. So I can explain that in a way, like from that point of view, being 13, getting bullied, not having a therapist, going through depression, not having words for any of it. And kids who at that point still haven't seen a therapist are like, okay, that's me. So then they can relate to it, but it never has to get into like the heavy duty stuff. And I may say like, oh, I went through a trauma when I was 5. And I have had kids like after the presentation come up and be like, may I ask what your trauma was? And I'm like, I'm not really comfortable saying it, especially without an adult around, because I would hate for my trauma to trigger you. Like that's another thing too with talking about trauma. I mean, especially like some of them are very intense and it's like, oh, this could really, if someone hasn't done their work and I just say this word, it could really like spin them out of control. So I do start every mental health talk with like, trigger warning, I'm going to talk about some trauma. I have these diagnoses, like, and I'm manic, that's another thing that a lot of people love or hate. So I've presented, and a group of humans that I adore, they all have been diagnosed with schizophrenia. They're in a band together. They're incredible. They play in Pittsburgh. I love them. But the lead guy, he's like this amazing guitar player. He came up to me after seeing me perform twice, and he was like, your mania makes me so relaxed. I love it. And I was like, you're the one. Like, I've never met someone who enjoys my mania. So thank you. You made me feel so good, because I think I've told you, I've had a man came up to me at the end of a show once and told me that my mania pushed him into an anxiety attack, that he had to walk out of my comedy show. And I'm like, well, I'm really sorry that happened. Thanks for letting me know. Like, once again, I'm a manic depressive, so I can't really control this whole mania thing. And that's why I work with it. And then he proceeds to ask me out on a date. And I'm just like, yo, no, you don't have to walk. I said, I'm too manic for you, but you want to go to a drink? No, you can't handle me. But anyway, like, it's just weird.
Boundaries.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah.
That could be a whole separate episode, right? Boundaries.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So it's interesting. I was the other day, I think it was last week. I was meeting with a friend who owns, she does therapy. She does massage therapy and some kind of movement therapy. And she has a small space. She's invited me, to allow me to do some laughter yoga at her place. But we were talking, and some of the things that she's going to do professionally, she's been talking with some pediatricians. They want her to come in and work with the kids, but she had been talking to me. She'd mentioned, I don't remember the exact statistics, but just the level at which depression, anxiety, mental health issues are happening with kids. And we've talked about this before. And I know you have, your, YouTube videos, the kids are not okay, or kids are not all right. And you do shows. So, that this is an issue. And I mean, I think since the pandemic, I feel like it's been talked about more because everybody's under different stressors or additional stressors, but kids especially, we're probably not talking about it enough, but definitely the youth has been impacted. And so have you been doing more presentations geared toward young people that address the topic of mental health and them taking care of themselves, or where to seek help, that sort of thing?
That I do have some stuff coming up in the spring that will be specifically for kids, mental health. But I will say, so my program that I do with my business partner, Josh, we're called the Josh and Gab Show. We're mostly we go into schools to promote positive behavior, being kind. It originally started as anti-bully, but I hated that term because I'm like, well, I'm not against any kid. I'm not anti the bully. I want the bully to get help. Obviously there's something going on. So that's sort of our vibe. But what was interesting with this school year, when we were doing, especially junior highs or middle schools, the minute they found out I had a background in mental health and mental health public speaking, they would pull me aside and be like, hey, I know this is supposed to be about kindness, but if you want to go ahead and say anything about mental health, I think that'd be really good. And so the one was this middle school where they had suspended 20 kids the day before. They were warning us, they're like, this is a bad area. These kids are going to eat you alive. We're like, okay, we hate that. We don't come in there for you to tell us how bad the kids are. You know what I mean? We're there to talk, the kids are who we're there for, man. Please don't build them as these monsters. And so I started with, hey, my name's Gab. I have bipolar disorder. I have CPTSD, I have OCD, and I have anxiety. But each one I said when I was like, I have bipolar disorder, a pocket of kids were like, yeah, I have CPTSD. Yeah, I have OCD. Yeah, you know what I mean? And it was from that moment on, we were all friends. And they were like, okay, she gets it. You know what I mean? Sometimes especially that preteen teen kid, they're over all the baby talk. They want to hear it. Oh, so you know what bipolar is? All right, let's talk, Gab. And it ended up being this really cool show. And I was able to address well, why are you guys getting in fist fights? And why don't you talk to those kids, even though you're in the same grade? And we conversed. It was phenomenal, but it wasn't supposed to be that, but I don't mind. I'm there to, my whole vibe, especially with the pro kindness, with the mental health, and as crazy as this might sound, is my goal is I hope to keep a person alive. One person hears my story and they're like, oh, okay, I can make it another day. Oh, okay, we can do this. Gab, I'll think of Gab or whatever. That's always been the goal, is to keep someone alive. That's my hope. You know what I mean? Because I think when I was a kid, I really wish there was a mascot for me. There was hey, you be nice to Gab, you know what I mean? Because I was so, mean, literally, not until the last year have I been nice to myself. Like the voice in my head has been the most evil voice ever. And it's just sad to think people are out there hating themselves, and they shouldn't.
Yeah. And I mean, I know you're not saying it to be like, any like, oh, I have to do this big responsibility, but what a world we live in though, where it's literally like your goal is, well, I want to help keep somebody alive. Like that's just, I mean, where we're at now. And I know there was, oh my gosh, we've been through what, pestilence, famine. I mean, the world has been through a lot, but it's just like to feel
Yeah.
like, I maybe because we're aware of it more now, and we have better words for it and better help for it. So we want people to get help, but like, what an unfortunate like heaviness that does have to be dealt with. That's like, if there are young people or people of any age out there that are so the voices in their head are so strong that they don't feel the love or feel that they're worth love. It's sad, you know?
Yeah. And then they're not given any tools to like fight it, like it's amazing. Like, it's amazing how I can see how much I've grown. I mean, and you and I were talking about this before we started, like, no one is ever out of the woodwork when it comes to mental health. Like, we're all susceptible to our brain taking over. I don't want to say that. We were talking about Twitch, who passed away, death by suicide. And he, and you and I were talking about how everyone kept saying, like, he was always smiling, like Twitch. He was so happy. He was the embodiment of happiness. And that was what really hit me, because I started thinking about smiling. And when I was little, my mom, who went through a ton of trauma when she was a kid. So I was the kid who wanted to make my mom happy and make everybody happy all the time. And I'm going to fix everything. And I'm 3. That's a lot of responsibility. But my mother had said to me once my teeth grew in, she was like, baby, you've got a great smile. And if you just smiled at anyone, you could turn their whole day around. You can make them happy. So always smile and make people happy. So smiling for me is not because I'm happy. I'm trying to make you happy, and it made me start thinking, like, what if Twitch never was smiling for Twitch? Like, what if Twitch always shared his smile to make us happy, and it worked? He made us happy, but it was never about Twitch being happy. It was about him making other people happy. Like, I really think we all think smiles are like, oh, that person's happy. And it's like, I smile to make you happy. I smile because it's a defense mechanism at this point, It just, I don't know. That was just something I really thought about I was a mess. I couldn't even post a picture of him. I mean, I probably lost 2 days over Twitch, which is probably ridiculous to hear because I don't know him, but I watched him on So You Think You Can Dance from his first audition. His wife is my favorite dancer of all time. Sorry, Fred Astaire. Like, it was a lot, and the 2 babies and the holidays and just all of it. It was, but I feel like if we don't talk about it, we're not helping anyone, and
I agree 100%. I had, and before we hit record, I said to you when I saw it again, I don't know him, and I didn't even know him from So You Think You Can Dance. I knew him on Ellen's show, and in his different dance videos, and he just seemed like such a joyful person, and he's a great dancer, and the smile, like you said, lit up a room. I remember just opening my laptop that day and just going, no, 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 because, and again, you bring up a good point about the smiling, and I think we're all everyone, you can't assume people's level of self-awareness, self-actualization, ignorance. And I don't mean that to be rude, but like, I'm a person who's not naive. Like, I don't believe everyone who's smiling is like, oh my gosh, they're so happy. I don't believe that, and I'm not one of those people that's, my mom had said to me once, I forget who we were talking about, different celebrities. And she's like, do you think they're really, depressed, or how could they be depressed? And believe me, I totally get how they could be depressed, because anyone can be depressed, can be anxious. And I almost feel like someone with money and fame has more reason, because that can go in a minute, or there's so much hype. And I mean, so not that I'm super, super aware I've ever had it, but I can understand that. But it's just such a fine line. Like you mentioned, smiling for other people, because I am also one of those people who's posted on my Facebook page, Laugh to Live, about smiling, because I know when I'm out for a run, I love when people give me a smile back. And like, I don't want to start feeling guilty or bad about that. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I do believe it's nice to give strangers smiles, because some people just have resting whatever face, or they just don't like to, or they're in their heads or whatever. So I do believe, I would say it is nice because I would say when I'm out for a run or walk and I look at someone and they look at me like, what the hell is she looking at? It's not going to hurt you to smile back or whatever. Like, it's a nice engagement. I love what I get out of it, but I do hear what you're saying too, where you can't just, there could be something hidden behind the smile where the person's hurting. And we need to understand or try to understand that more, I guess, and to check in on those people too. Like, are you really okay? Or, and I don't know what the answer is, because you think, well, did he talk about it with anyone,
Right.
his wife or whoever? We don't know. I mean, I don't know. But it's hard and it is sad. Yeah.
Yeah. And you wonder, was he in weekly therapy? Was he even, I mean, I know none of this, but yeah, it was really wild. And I will say, from the smile thing, I agree. Like, when someone smiles, it makes my day. But as someone who perpetually is always smiling, and I'm a waver, like when I live in a neighborhood and I'm taking my walks and I see people, I'm always like, hi. And when that's not reciprocated, even, I mean, I would say truly, Janine, like, for as much as I smile and wave at strangers, I don't get it back. Like, I get 20, if I give 100%, I'm getting maybe 15%, and those 15% make my whole day. But when I'm happy and I don't get it back, then I'm like, well, why don't they like me? And why aren't they smiling? And then I'm like spinning, because I am fragile. Like, I think I'm way more fragile than people think. And I could, and right in a second, I went from, hey, stranger, I hope everyone lives. Hey, why doesn't he like me? And now I'm raging, and, my whole walk has been ruined. So I really have all the disorders I say I have, people.
I'm the one that's like, I love smiling and waving, whether it's a walk or a run. And, but when they don't, or I'm the one that, I'm muttering to myself, oh, what am I, scary looking? Oh, excuse me for ruining your day by saying hello. Then I get over it. But I genuinely love when someone will talk to, like, even, so the one day, this is a couple of years ago, I'm out for a run and the guys got on a Trump hat, and I'm not going to go into politics, but I didn't happen to vote for Trump, just saying. But see, I'm not, and I think we've talked about this before, where like life is not black or white. And that kind of pisses me off these days, because all of us are hypocrites to some degree, and life is really lived in the gray in the middle. And it's like, oh, you believe this, so you must believe that because that's this agenda. No, I will tell you, I do not.
Right.
So just because I see a person who has a Trump bumper sticker or who has the hat on, I'm not going to assume they're an asshole or not say hello to them. Like, that's, other people might like, that's not me. So I was like, okay. And I'm out for my run or jog, older man with the hat and the signs. And he's like, I said, morning, good morning. Great day, isn't it? And I said, yeah, it is. I love that, because we're all human. Yes. And when someone starts that conversation of, oh my God, how about this weather? I eat that shit up. I love it. Yep. Absolutely.
This is going to sound so dorky, but I feel like you're the one person who'll get this. That's why I love to take walks or runs on like a holiday, because like if you go early morning out and like, happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, Happy Easter. It's all the like, I don't even know you people, but today we're all celebrating and I love it. Like, it's so, oh my God, those are like my favorite days to work out in the neighborhood, just to like wish everybody a happy holiday. I feel like George Bailey on Christmas. Merry Christmas, Bedford Falls. Like, it's just ridiculous. But yeah, I
totally
love that
do
shit.
it.
And back to your point about someone in a Trump hat, so I was, okay, long story, and I also want to talk about your gray area in a second, but like this was months ago, 6 months ago, and I got my first round of COVID the last time I was on the podcast with you. I had COVID. I didn't know it. It was the new variant. I ended up with pneumonia. I ended up in an ICU unit. It was intense. So I'm wearing masks, back to like, I don't want to die. And I'm at the grocery store, and my cashier had been talking to the person in front of me, all chatting her up, blah, blah, blah. She wasn't wearing a mask, that person. I come up and I'm like, hi. And she doesn't talk to me at all. And I'm like, oh, is it because I'm wearing a mask? Like, and I'm like feeling badly about myself and the whole interaction. She's not friendly. I leave, I go out to my car, and I'm just like truly miserable. Like, oh my God, I can't believe she hates me because I'm wearing a mask. And I can feel a man standing behind me. And I'm like, there's someone standing behind me. Why is somebody standing behind me? And then I turn around, there is a man standing behind me, but it's an older man in a Trump hat. And he's like, hi, honey, I just wanted to see, do you want me to take your cart back up to the store for you? And I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, that means so much to me. Yes, thank you. So he's like, oh, you have a good day, honey. And I didn't even realize he had a Trump hat until like all this happens. And I'm like, you have a good day. You're so kind. And he's wearing a Trump hat. I'm like, the one angel I needed today happens to be someone who voted for Trump. So don't tell me that all Trump voters are horrible, because in a moment to moment basis, this guy was a real sweetie. So I don't know, man. It's like, life is gray. It's a gray zone.
It is. Yeah, it absolutely is. And I there's so many things in my head, but I'm not going to unleash them tonight.
Right.
I don't. But yes, to that point, and that's why I get upset with the far left, I will say, that are like, oh, all those people are this way, or all those people are that. Oh, we can't. It's like, come on, no, because I'm still always going to say, let's see people first. You know what I mean? And let's judge individuals as they react or respond or treat you. You know what I mean? It's like, I think we have to. I mean, because otherwise you're being what you're accusing other people of doing. You know what I mean? It's just like, hello, I don't think anyone gets a pass just because,
oh yeah. And that's my issue with extremism on both sides. It's like, I don't like extremists. I don't, in any aspect, not just politics, religion, comic books. Have you ever gone to a Comic-Con? They ruin it for everybody else. It's like, I don't need to know every issue of Silver Surfer dude to like Silver Surfer. Back off, you gatekeepers. But yeah, the extremists, I can't deal with them on either side. In fact, I do a ton of work, which I'm so excited about, that the physical disability community and the mental health community are finally joining forces and being like, hey, we should all fucking team up because we're all the same. Sorry, I said the F word. We should all team up because we're the same and we can really like get a lot of work done. Well, I've been seeing all of these like TikToks, which I know I shouldn't be on TikTok because it's not good for my mental health, but basically saying if you don't wear a mask, you cannot say that you are like, you defend anyone who's disabled or whatever. Like you can't be an advocate for disabled people. And and this is one of those gray areas because so this is what's interesting. Prior to getting COVID, my therapist was forcing me not to wear a mask in public. She felt that because my OCD manifests in germs, bacteria, anything like that, that she thought it was me being out of control. She's like, you're vaccinated, you're younger, you're healthy. You have no pre-existing conditions. There's no reason you should be. So she was lecturing, forcing me not to wear a mask. Then I get COVID and pneumonia and everything. And then my regular doctor is like, what kind of therapist does you do exposure therapy with a freaking pandemic? No, don't listen to her, wear a mask. So then I go back to my session. I'm like, my doctor said I like not to listen to you and then I have to wear a mask. I mean, I got pneumonia. I was in ICU. And she's like, well, for how long? And I'm like, well, I thought she meant for, she's like, no, you're like, you could do this for like 6 weeks and recover. You're back off. So my point being, my therapist doesn't want me to wear a mask. You're saying it's ableist to not wear a mask. I'm being told by my person to not wear a mask. I mean, it all makes me crazy. And that's what I mean about gray, Janine. It's
yes.
a hard road.
It is an absolute hard road. And I will tell you that I go out and about now, and I'll admit I don't wear one anymore. And I get people who do. I'm not going to look at them funny, but at the same time, again, I have those other friends who probably think I'm terrible for not. But at the same time, like my dad's 86, my mom's 77. They're the most important people to me. It's like them and me and those yes, I care about other people, but them, my dad that goes out without one, he's working out at the YMCA. He's among germs all the time. They're the ones who are most important to me. And then I have smart friends, and I'll say educated friends who are not politically motivated, who don't necessarily believe them and who talk to me about articles they've read, and I'm open to hearing different things. So I just think that's where we get like, it's not, life is not, oh, well, you must think this because you're wearing the mask, or you're not wearing the mask, so you must be this. No, trust me, I guarantee you don't know me. You don't know me because of one behavior. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other part, like I always say to my sister, is like, okay, if I'm the only person in the room wearing a mask, this isn't helping me because you're all spitting in my eyes. So I'm still getting it anyway. And now I have this anxiety thing off my face that's like, because I do get like very claustrophobic and I can get real worked up in a mask, but I don't mind it. I'll do it. And especially before, when I thought I'm getting a pneumonia shot, insurance finally qualified me to get the pneumonia shot. And that's going to make me feel a hell of a lot better being out. I've had pneumonia 4 times in my life. Like I think I'm someone prone to, this is the only time I ever ended up in the hospital, but Yeah, but that's just like you're saying, like, it doesn't mean I don't believe in COVID if I'm not wearing a mask. If no one else is wearing one, I don't see how this is helping me right now.
Yeah. And you mentioned a good point that people tend to forget about the eyes. Like that's mucous membranes
Oh yeah.
too, that like, there was a certain point where people were wearing protective eyewear, but typically that is not even talked about. So it's kind of like, I think sometimes the approach, and I say in this country only because this is where we live, but it's like, well, it's better than not at all. Like, I think we take a whatever kind of approach and, but it's not fully educational. It's not fully
Right.
explained, but, but let's not go there because there's
Yeah.
enough out there about that. But, and to your point about TikTok and social media, yeah, that is a big part of people's mental wellness. That is, I myself find it like, if it wasn't for me doing like comedy shows, laughter yoga, having a business, I would probably be just about ready to give up on Facebook because of that so much of like, oh my God. And some of the passive aggressive posts, like, like if people aren't loving you back and but you're like, okay, we get it. You've been wounded because you've posted something like this 30 times in a day. Like, I mean, I don't know. It's maybe are people crying out? Like, I kind of feel like it's sad. Like there's so much stuff every day that I'm like, I don't know. I have to like, I go scroll through it quickly and then I just put the phone down because I roll my eyes. I just can't. Or like certain people are so much better than everyone else because they do this or because they've rescued a dog or a cat. And I'm like, okay, sure.
Oh yeah. It's madness like there's this thing that'll happen, and I don't even like being on Twitter because the guy who owns it now is a monster, but is he a monster? I don't know. Apparently he lets bad people on. I barely bet on it, but there'll be like a random tweet where someone's like, yeah, I buried my wife today. She was 45 years old, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just thinking, I've never buried a spouse. I've never been married, but I buried both parents and a brother. I can promise you, did not run to social media to be like, mom took her last breath today. Like, I don't understand that mentality. Like, I get like, maybe you need some sympathy right now, but in the tweet will be like and share if you can relate. Like and share if I can relate burying my wife at 45. Like, this is the most bizarre tweet I have ever seen. And I see them daily. Or like on TikTok, it's like someone has a good idea once and then like 900 other people just repeat that same idea. Like, and it could be something like positive, just like, hey, childhood trauma is this, but like, I see it 100 different ways, the same wording. And I'm just like, this is not for me. If I didn't have to promote myself on social media, I'd be done. I would be living in the woods, writing and coming out to do shows. Like, that's the dream, to just hide and come out to perform and just hide again. Like
yeah. And I hate to, like, when I talk about it with one friend, he does help me kind of like, Janine, some people use it for that and that's their thing. And like, okay, I get it. But like, I literally last week saw a girl post something about, it said something like, in the hospital getting a blood test, but I just had to post. I didn't, because someone was getting upset because they thought I was posting for blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, this is your concern. You're in the hospital getting blood work. And because you're worried about how someone perceived what you had posted before, like, this is our level of like humanness. This is what we're doing. Like, I'm sorry, it's ridiculous. And I know I'm going to be an asshole here, so asshole alert. Like when someone's like, okay, this is it. I'm getting off social media, or like someone who's been gone and they're like, I'm back. Oh, yay. I'm like, I think we'll manage.
Yeah. No, social media.
Yeah.
It's so, like, years ago, my brother passed away. We had a cousin who was in college at the time, and she was Snapchatting my brother's urn at his funeral. My sister and I were like, should we say something? I said to my sister, I'm like, I just want to know what freaking filter she's using. Like, does Peppy have googly eyes on the urn, or like, what is it? The cat filter, the
bunny
dog
ears.
mouth like, yeah, like, what is she doing? Why? And it was like her posing with the urn. Like, no, we're at a funeral, friend. Stop it.
And I get that this is the world. What's that word? It's ubiquitous or whatever. This is the world. I'm not saying it's for the better though. I mean, yes, I always tell people, if you do have a business, you do need to be on it because it's free, and that's where people look. And I mean, it's just smart, you can't help it. But at the same time, like for me, I get annoyed, and I won't get started on this about, like, we've talked about this, getting friends to share things and they'll share the stupidest memes or whatever. But it's like, people are getting very, like, they're not thinking for themselves anymore. And it's like, just because everyone else is sharing this one joke, you don't have to. I've seen it a million times in one day. Go ahead and share something that's original from someone like Gab Bonesso or me. And it's just like, they're just not thinking. That's the part that frightens me. And of course, don't get me started on grammar, because people have given up on that in this country about 10 years ago.
Oh, I feel like it was popular in the early 2000s to never capitalize. Like that's when everyone started like just lowercase. And then we're like, well, if we're just going to lowercase, why would we do punctuation? And then it was like, well, now we have emojis. Why would we even use words? Cat face, dog face, piece of cheese. What did that mean, Gab? It just, yeah, I don't even. And now we all have to just Snapchat. We can't even like type. We have to just talk and leave little videos or I'm sad. Janine, I went to school. I literally thought theater was still going to be a thing. Like I was in college and I'm like, you can be a playwright. Like people like original thought. And as I was saying it, it was like, wait, what's on Broadway right now? Oh, they took a Disney movie and now they're making that a show. Oh, wait, they took a TV show and now that's a Broadway musical. Like I'm just appalled at theater in this country. Like I was cheated and robbed. Like I sometimes would assume my university that I went to and be like, it's dead, man. You should have given me this degree. Like I'm furious. I'm the angriest artist in the world. I'm miserable. I think as smiley as I am, I'm so miserable, Janine.
Who needs Shakespeare when you've got Shrek on Broadway?
Oh.
Or Mean Girls? Legally Blonde.
No, stop it. Oh my God. I was doing a show and I was talking about Greek tragedy and I said something about Medea, and a kid at a show raised their hand that was like, I love Medea. And I was like, oh my God, thank you. Seriously, they're teaching you Euripides. This is the best news of my life. And they're like, I love Tyler Perry. And I'm like, I quit. Gab is out. I'm done. I will not do this anymore. Yeah, it's rough.
It is rough, but I would like to say, so because, in case anyone's listening and going, oh, these pretentious snobs, one thing I will say is we may sound like that, but I think, and I won't speak for Gab, but it's disappointing when people need to, it's good. Let's put it this way. It's good to expand your knowledge, right? It's good to expose yourself to different things, to read, to not just see what's being pushed by algorithms and things like that. And the classics and things like, are important. So I think that's our point, because the one thing I will say is, if you enjoy what we might be calling some kind of crap, like I might call some show crap or whatever, but if you enjoy it and it's not hurting anyone else and you're laughing, then that's great. You enjoy it, because, and I probably had said this before on the podcast, I told my one friend recently who was guilty of it and he laughed. I said, a couple of years ago, because he plays drums, Rob, he's actually been on the show, Robert Thomas, if you're listening, you know this because I told you this. He and another friend who both play drums were laughing at me for liking Coldplay. And I remember in that moment that night, like, they're like, that's not music. And I kind of I didn't feel bad. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say I buried myself under my covers to never come out for 2 weeks, because I can handle more than that. But like, I kind of was like, oh, like I was a little embarrassed because they were like, that's not music. And it took me years. And I just told him this a couple of weeks ago. He was laughing and I said, you're an asshole. I said, because I happen to like Coldplay's music and some of their songs literally make me feel really good. Like they pump me up and everything. And it's like, so if I enjoy it, screw you, because it's not quote unquote real music,
No, 100%. And if you like Legally Blonde, the musical and everything, that's fine. Like you're saying, it's heart-wrenching to think like, there were people who made a living just writing plays, just original plays. Like that is insane to me. I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but I don't think they're making a living doing.
Yeah. No. And to your point though, too,
5 other jobs.
We're doing so many. No. And to your point, I think there's also a certain bit of laziness because we're doing all these reboots. And what about, are people not writing anymore, or the people writing are just getting shunned because they're just not getting to the right financial funding source or whatever, which is sad, because I don't think we need to keep rehashing a movie that was done 20 years ago, let's do a reboot. Well, how about if someone wrote something original that maybe we'd like to see? Like, that would be good, right?
And there's so many books that haven't been made into movies. It's like, well, why are we doing this book again when we could do, this book? You've never tried to write a movie. I don't know. It's just, yeah, I get really bummed out that like people do prefer, like TikTok is the perfect example of people wanting to see recycled material, nothing original. It breaks my heart that originality is like shunned now. It breaks my heart that we live in such a society that like, you think it's cool to be the first one to find out like something bad somebody did 10 years ago. So you want to cancel them. And it's like, okay, but they changed since then and they're not that. And I'm not talking about people who actually like commit crimes and they're not getting canceled. They're going to jail. That's a whole other story. I'm talking like, if you're an artist and 10 years ago, you may have once said a word that people are like, oh, you said that word or whatever. I don't know. And your life is over. Like, that's kooky. I don't want to be a part of that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I just wish people could be a little bit nicer, a little more empathetic, give more grace, have more grace. I think if we have grace for ourselves, we can give it to others more easily. But yeah, TikTok is rough because it's a lot of that polarizing. If you think this, you're this, and I'm done. And it's like, whoa, you're 14 years old. I don't want to listen to you. Like, I'm sorry.
13 and a half years before I got on TikTok, you don't know what I know.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
how about that? Is that one? I think she was probably, I don't know how old she is, kind of young-ish, but 18, 20-ish. That was on I believe it was on TikTok about the one professor with those Idaho murders. And she had launched this whole thing, like saying that tying her to these murders, like how dangerous and irresponsible is that? I mean, to launch a campaign against someone where there's literally, as far as I understand, no real evidence to it.
Yeah. I mean, I think people are doing that constantly on me. Like, yeah, it's a weird time to be alive. That's what my poor little godson, he's 2.5 years old. And I'm just like, oh man, I would not want to be 2.5 right now. Like, oh buddy, we all have to live to stay here for this kid. Cause we got to look out for him. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Challenging times, but let's get to something lighter. Okay. So Super Bowl, are you a football person? I am not, but I'm just asking you in case you are.
No, I'm not. I'm a horrible, I always make this joke. So I grew up in Pittsburgh. Steelers are everything. I'm not a Steeler fan. People don't like that, but I have a very good reason. It's because I grew up Italian in Pittsburgh, and our Sunday football games were a little different. It wasn't just snacks and enjoying the game. It was dad bet our entire mortgage on the game and, what bookie would be coming after us the following Monday. So I have a lot of PTSD when it comes to professional sports. And I would rather watch a Criminal Minds episode.
Yeah, much more relaxing. I hear you. Enough said about that. Totally. I could see where you'd be coming from with that for sure. Yes.
Yeah. I remember there was some game where all the men in my family were sobbing. Like, they bet everything. They had they knew they were going to win this game. And then all of a sudden it was like, no, we're not winning this game. And my grandmother was crying. People were praying. It was a disaster. I just was like, this is weird. Yeah. Being Italian is weird. Yeah.
Being Italian is weird. Do you find, I had a woman on, Stephanie Longo, I forget when exactly, and she was talking about Italian heritage, and I think October was Italian Heritage Month or something like that. And we talked, she's written books on it, and she talked about not wanting to talk about the whole, like, mafia, that kind of thing, because she says it does exist, but she feels that it's a little too much of a stereotype and all that. Like, is that, what's your experience as an Italian? And do you identify to your heritage where it's important to you, or?
Yes. So I grew up where my grandfather had immigrated to America. My grandmother was born here, but just barely. And she used that as, I'm an American. I was born here. She really was proud of being an American. They spoke Italian constantly, especially when they wanted to talk about stuff they didn't want me to hear. And they were my daycare. So, and I was the youngest by a lot. So I'm like this baby, to these older grandparents who are, basically immigrants making their own wine and just interesting folks. So we were very into our Italian culture. My mom had grown up in complete trauma, so her family wasn't really a big part of us. And my mom basically just immersed herself in my dad's culture. And I feel like I grew up Italian American, like that Italian came first in the Bonesso squad. And my, and it was a famous story of my pap had left Pittsburgh to go to Detroit because he was the only person in Pittsburgh with a car. So he drove to Detroit to try to work. He worked with the mob. And the way the story ended that my grandfather left the mob is he was a driver for the mob. So he never killed anybody, but he would take you on your last ride. And the last person he was driving to their last ride was his best friend in Detroit. And his best friend was like, "Where are we going, Nick? What are we gonna do today, Nick?" And my pap's like, "I don't think you're gonna like it." Anyway, my pap was the sweetest man in the world, but he did technically drive for the mob. My first job as a kid was I was a bookie's assistant. I'm not going to say who the bookie was because it's a relative, but I was their assistant and I would get paid in like nutcracker tickets or like toys, stuff like that. I was 9 years
Things
old.
that fell off the truck, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Oh my God. Family holidays. There was tons of stuff that fell off the truck. My own childhood home was, we were ransacked by US Marshals because at one point my father had tried to get into the fake Gucci business. He started a storefront called Affordable Shops, where in the back he would sell all the fake Guccis. Yeah. Hard to believe the US Marshals found out about this. And while I was at school one day, they ransacked our house, took all the stuff that was fake. My mom cleaned up the house before we came home from school, but I just remember coming home and being like, "Where's my Gucci sweatsuit? Where's my moon phase watch?" Because we had all these nice watches too that were fake. And my mom said that my brother sold them because we needed food for dinner. And me being the people pleaser was like, "Oh, okay, well then that makes sense. If we needed money for food for dinner, then I'd want you to sell my moon phase watch." But I was like, yeah. They lied to me. They gaslit me yet again, but that's okay. I don't think I should have known that US Marshals were climbing through our house.
So do you think Italians are unfairly portrayed then in the media?
I think what I truly think is we came here, nobody wanted us to be here, and we had to figure out we're scrappy people, and we had to figure out a way to make it work. Yeah, that's what I think. But I was cracking up when you said October is Italian Heritage Month, because I'm like, is this what we're doing now that we obviously we've had to say no more to Christopher Columbus. We've had to give that day up. That is not our day anymore. We had a day. We don't have that day anymore. So we're going to take all of October. We're like, now it's Italian Remembrance Month.
Well, interesting. You should say that. And I'm not going to get involved in the controversy because so Stephanie, who is like an Italian historian, and she was a guest in September, she still is proud to speak of Christopher Columbus. And she talked a little bit about that. And she said she welcomes anyone that wants to talk to her about that. And I said, awesome. Okay, I listened because I will freely admit where I'm ignorant and I don't know. I do know what I hear and the difference, but I'm not I'm not throwing my hat into the ring. I'm Irish. Okay. I'm Irish, English, Welsh, and I hear, but I didn't get into that, but she still believes in that. And I'm just saying that. So she still feels that way. She's a proud Italian, but it happens to be October is Italian American Heritage Month. So there you go.
That's good to know. Well, so growing up, your friend will like this. Growing up we put Italian flags in our front yard for Columbus Day. That was a big deal for us. We're like, it's our day. It's Columbus Day. Here we go. Let's get the wine out. Let's put the flags in. And then obviously in the last few years, everyone's like, he's a monster. He is horrible. And it's like, okay, yeah, most of the people who help found this country are monsters, but I'm glad we're going to get rid of the one day for Italians. So my sister's been trying to get us to have a Stanley Tucci Day.
Oh, yeah, he's awesome.
But I feel like in Pittsburgh, we just lost Franco Harris. He was a famous Steeler who was all Italian.
Penn and it was Stater. That's what I like.
See, and I feel like we could have Franco Harris Day and he could take over. But yeah, I mean, it's been really rough. I told friends recently at a comedy show that my family put Columbus flags up and they're like, I wouldn't say that out loud ever again. And I'm like, but it's my truth. And even though it's we were ignorant, maybe here's my thing. I don't get to say happy Columbus Day anymore, but we can say happy Thanksgiving. And that story is a lot. Like, I'm just so confused right now. Like, I didn't know if I could say happy Thanksgiving this year. Like I told my sister, I'm like, are we allowed to say that? Can you say happy Thanksgiving? Like, I don't know what is happening anymore. So
Yeah.
I just go,
Well,
do my.
and to that point, and again, like I said, I don't want to go off, but that is where I get so frustrated and annoyed, where I feel like there's such gray, and that we as a people, as a country, whether people want to admit it or not, I will freely admit it, that we're hypocritical. Like, I'm sure I'm hypocritical in certain things I say and believe and do and whatever. And like, oh, I want to boycott this business, but this, not this one, or what, all that stuff. Like you said, a lot of people don't believe like Thanksgiving is not a day to sell. Like, you know what I mean? Like that, but we're not there yet where we're still saying it, but given another year or two. And so it's like, I don't know. It's just hard. It's hard to keep up with everything.
It really
Yeah.
is.
And that's what I wanted to say to your point of, as a kid that you put up those flags or whatever. One thing that does kind of irritate me is that we shouldn't have to erase what we did do before. I think it's important to educate, so you could say, okay, you know what? We used to talk highly of this person because they did this, this, and this, but then we learned more information, or we, whatever. But I don't think it's like, you had your childhood, and like, you had memories that I'm sure actually mean something to you. And so that's where I get kind of pissed off anymore. Cause it's like, and when we had Black Lives Matter, I remember reading, these, again, young white person who had posted something about how she was embarrassed or felt guilty to be white. And I'm like, oh, for Christ's sake. Like, I'm sorry. I didn't have an order put in that I wanted to, I would have asked to be born with a dick so I could have more privilege than I do have. But I mean, like, don't even go there. Like, I'm going to apologize for how I was born. I didn't, you know what I mean? Like, I think we're getting a little crazy, and I don't even believe that it is with a genuine heart. You know what I mean? It's like, let me make sure I look like I'm doing this,
That person you're describing sounds like someone who, it's like they're taking the pain of another community and being like, I wish I were, I shouldn't even, they're making it about them. And it's like, or you could just stop talking and listen for 10 seconds. It's not about you today. It's like that kind of crap is so, I don't know, man. Yeah. It's not, it's people who just are moving without thinking. It's everything you learn in therapy not to do. Like, I mean, in, OCD therapy, you can't do all or nothing thinking. That's all I see on the internet is all or nothing thinking. So It's really hard to be a part of that when I know that that's unhealthy, and you can't, like, I had a friend who was just, all cops are bad, like F the police, all cops are bad. And I work out at a gym where there were several homicide detectives at my gym. And I'm not saying there's a difference between homicide detectives and beat cops, but homicide detectives go through a little bit more training. There's a lot of them. And we have like potentially an active serial killer in Pittsburgh that I know one of them is working on. Not easy stuff. They walk into some of the worst scenarios ever. Horrible things, right? And then this guy is going to say to me, they're all bad. They're all horrible. I'm like, well, yeah, but I know these people. Like, I know them. Like, my brother died and they donated to my brother's funeral. Like, they're not all bad. Like, like not all, like, you can't, but if it was the other way and you were like, well, all Italians are criminals, I'd be like, you can't say that either. Like, all or nothing is wrong thinking, and it means it on both sides. And so, yeah, it's rough. It's tough.
And when is that ever true anyway? Everybody who blank does blank, or nobody who, stop using everybody or nobody or all this or that, because it's never true. I mean, yes, there are stereotypes, or there are like whatever, and there's certain behavior that's identified, but you can't say all or nothing. You just can't. Like, we need to knock that shit out. We really need to. But let's close on a happy note. So on a happy note, and you mentioned murder before, I have to ask you if you ever finish all of Evil that I told you about. I know you were
finished it like I zoomed through it. Yeah, I think I'm caught up waiting for the new season.
Excellent.
Oh, speaking of which, I wanted to tell you, I watched it's like, I don't think it's like a show. It's like a one season only, but it's not like Evil, but I think if you like Evil, you like it. It's called Midnight Mass. It's on Netflix.
Yes, saw it. Yes.
Changed my life. I'm now deep in that Mike Flanagan, Kate Siegel marriage. I had already seen Haunting of Hill House. I just rewatched Haunting of Bly Manor, and they did a movie called Hush, where they like the writer is working on Midnight Mass. So like parts of the script are brought up. And this was from like 2016. Such a good movie. Scared the crap out of me.
Is Hush the one where, and I don't want to give anything away for anyone, but she's in like a house with glass and the guy is outside,
Yes, and she's
like
deaf.
trying to break, and he has a mask, right? And he's trying to break in or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I did see that too.
Yeah.
I liked it a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of them now. Like now that became my obsession of 2023 is Mike Flanagan, Kate Siegel, everything they've ever done and throwing myself into that. But Midnight Mass was like the show for me because growing up Catholic, I love vampires and all that stuff. And just this idea that like, that a priest would think a vampire is an angel. Like that makes total sense. Like, no, everyone was afraid of the angels. And it's like, yo, Padre, that's not an angel. I just loved it. I love the whole thing. A lot of Neil Diamond music. I'm a huge Neil Diamond fan. That's my show. That changed my life.
All right. Yeah. Well, I figured you had been through Evil because it was a while ago that we talked about that, but I just really wanted you to like it. And when you said you did, I was like, hey, I knew she'd like it. That's a great show. I cannot wait for it to come back.
I can't imagine what's going to happen in this season because they left us like, wait, what? So I'm really excited. Yeah.
Yeah. But how about too, like not just the darkness, but like the humor that comes out in it? Like it's hysterical.
And if it didn't have that humor, I don't think I could watch. Like, I think it'd be too much. Like the humor is the saving grace of that show because it's like, holy, what did I just watch?
Yeah. Some of it's pretty damn heavy and scary. Like it's scary at times.
Oh my God. There've been episodes where I literally have had to like pause it, put blanket over my head, be like, okay, I can do this. All right, I can go back to watching it. Yeah. No, it's really good. It's really good. I'm glad you got me hooked on that.
Excellent. Well, and if you ever come across any others that you find, please just message me because I'm all about those like murder mysteries or documentaries. Speaking of which, did you see the documentary, The Axe Wielding Hitchhiker? Dude.
No, but I just saw Rosie O'Donnell talking about it on TikTok and she was like going to write the guy in prison. And I'm like, maybe I need to watch this.
Yes. Watch it and let me know what you think of it. Cause it's also, what do I want to say? Adding on to what we just spoke about, like with people on social media and how things are one way or the other. With his situation, he became a little bit of a folk hero, so to speak, where he was huge on social media. So after what he did, so it would be interesting. I'd be curious to see what you think of it. Yeah, it was, and me watching it, of course, like Oliver and I joke about this because his husband talks or yells at the TV and I do this too. And I said to him, oh, Oliver, you would have loved it. Cause I like yell at the TV, like, oh, come on, people. Like, and I started watching The Shining Girls on Apple. And I guess it's,
I love that.
Are you watching it?
Yeah. I watched it. Yeah.
So I didn't know going in, and again, I don't want any spoilers for people, but I like murder mysteries, right? But I don't love anything that's kind of, I'm not real big fan of like sci-fi-ish and time jumps or whatever, which I didn't know till I started watching it. So I told him, I'm sitting there going, oh, come on, she just had long hair. Now she has short hair. What the hell year is this? What day is it? And I was getting mad because I couldn't follow it. So I took a pause. I watched about 4 or 5 episodes and I need to go back. I enjoy it, but I enjoy more of the just like, the murder or whatever, because when you get into like time jumps or warps, I'll admit, I just don't understand it. And I'm kind of thrown. So I was very frustrated trying to follow it.
That's what with Christian Bale, right? He's the guy, the time traveling guy. Oh, no, Jamie Bell, the boy from Billy Elliot.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
No, I really love that, but I do love sci-fi. I'm definitely like the weirder the better for me. I can really get into it. There was a show called From that's on Stars. I don't know if you have Stars, and that was really interesting. And I think you might like it. And it's pretty, I'd say it's linear and not too sci-fi, but creepy for sure. And the new Criminal Minds is awesome, for the record.
Oh, the new, I was looking on Twitter and I saw Paige, what's her real name? The detective.
Paget Brewster.
Thank you, Paget Brewster. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, they have a new show. So is it the same kind of crew and it picks up later or?
For the most part, it's the same crew. No, Dr. Spencer Reed this time, which in the first 2 seasons, I had a huge crush on him. He was my guy. But truthfully, like looking back, he was kind of whiny and didn't really make sense. Like without him, I'm telling you, this reboot is some of the best Criminal Minds ever. And I have been faithful since season 1. And I am obsessed like this, because they're really focusing on like one killer who kind of branches out and has lots of killers all over the country. So
Okay.
and the guy from Midnight Mass, who played Rory, he's the unsub in Criminal Minds that they're looking for, and you get to see
Okay.
like him. Yeah, it's really it's worth it. It's definitely worth it. I've really enjoyed
Okay.
it.
I think I'd like to see, is Penny in it? That was the blonde
Yes,
girl with
they
the
bring her
glasses.
back. They bring her back. Yeah, and I like her even more this time because she's a little more real and not always bubbly. And yeah,
Okay. All right. Yeah. I
it's good.
saw
I recommend it.
Paget Brewster on Twitter talking about it. And I'm like, wait a minute. I thought that show was over. And then I think it's on Paramount Plus or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Then I will definitely check that
Every
out.
Thursday there's a new episode. So
Very cool. Very cool.
catch
All
up.
right.
You have, yeah, I highly recommend it. Very good.
Well, and so I said I don't like sci-fi, but I did like, I don't know if you consider Stranger Things sci-fi.
Loves
Because I liked Stranger Things, so I liked it a lot, but that's kind of sci-fi-ish, right?
I guess I would call that sci-fi. Yeah, I love
Kind
it.
of.
I'm a mess with Stranger Things. Like that's when my TikTok addiction got bad because I started having like all kinds of like theories and I needed to watch everybody who had theory. I mean, I watched it all with way too quickly and then rewatched. I probably rewatched. I don't want to get into it. I have a problem with Stranger Things. I really
Okay.
relate to 11 because I don't think I'm from this planet, and it's just nice to see a show with a character represented who's not from Earth.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So that's the kind of like, I'm like sci-fi light, I guess. And I guess
Okay.
with the Shining Girls, I didn't go into it knowing that about it. So like, this is me on my couch, like, oh, what is happening? Like I really had a little trouble kind of following it. And then of course I had to go online, but I didn't really want spoilers, but I was like, oh, okay. So this is what's going on. So it is, because I mean, and then she'd be like, have short hair, and then she had long hair. And I'm like, all right, something's going on.
Right. She'd live with her mom, then she'd have a husband. Like,
Yeah.
what's
And
going
I got that she didn't, like, she had to write down things, but then I was like, okay, she was just with the cat. Now she has a dog. Like, I'm like, what is going on here? So yeah, but I like it enough that I'll go back to it. I think I do want to see how it goes. But so that was the other thing. I'm like, how is this guy not aging? And then I'm like, okay, the bad guy, so
Right.
to speak. I'm like, all right. So this is not what I had hoped it would be, but I think I could still watch it.
Yeah, no,
Hashtag
I'm
first
that
world
way,
problems.
like there's certain shows that they just don't look good to me, but I'm sure like, and this is gonna sound horrible if you like the show, Game of Thrones. Like every time I would see a scene, I'd be like, I don't think I'm gonna like it. And then everyone would be like, Gab, it's the best show ever. You need to watch it. And I still haven't watched it. Right. And then Yellowstone is the new one that everyone I know watches Yellowstone. And I love cowboy movies. And I'm like, I still don't think I'm gonna like it. I don't want a soap opera about cowboys. I'd rather watch a John Wayne movie. I don't know.
So I've never seen one episode of Game of Thrones because I didn't have HBO, and I know friends who are like, "Oh, I just get it during the season when it comes out." So I've never seen that. I do watch Yellowstone, but I'm not up to speed on it because I don't have Paramount Network. I have Plus, but not Network, and that's what it's on. So then when it's over, they put it on Peacock. So it's already like a year old. So I'm caught up except this season, but I did enjoy it. And it was,
You think I would like it?
I'll admit, it's not my usual thing. I'll admit, like, I'm not a big fan of cowboy stuff, but there's drama. Let's put it that way. It's
Okay.
more drama than anything else, and it's entertaining enough. Like, but another show people rave about, and I've yet to watch it, and I keep saying I would give it a shot. Breaking Bad. I've never seen it, and I know how much
I've never
people
seen
love it. Yeah.
Yeah. My mother would watch it when she was still alive, and she'd be like, "Baby, you love this show. Stay and watch it with me." And I'm like, "Mom, I cannot watch this right before bed. Like, I don't know how you can watch a show like this and then go to sleep. So no, I'm going to bed. See you later." Like I just could tell it would work me up. I don't know.
So do you make sure not to watch like all these shows that are kind of intense? Do you not watch them then right before bed? They have to be much earlier.
That's what's weird. Like, murder doesn't work me up, but like a drug dealer who's trying to hide his identity might work me up. You know, a meth head could work me up. I don't know. It's hard to describe. But for bed, usually I go between like, these days it's like Big Bang Theory or Friends. Like I'll just, because that like is on HBO Max and it'll just play the whole night. I have to have sound while I sleep. I have to have tons of lights on. I'm still afraid of the dark. I still sleep with a teddy bear. Yeah, that's why I don't think I'm ever gonna date. I don't know. Like my therapist, that's what she wants to work on now. It's like we're gonna do like the trauma therapy with the clickers. I can't remember what it's called, and she'll be mad at me for not remembering it right now. EMDR, yeah, EMDR, but about my dating history and the trauma of dating, because she just wants me to really like be 100% like I don't want to date. And I've done the work as to why I don't want to date, rather than me just being like, there's no point. I don't want to do it. I really don't want to date. And I still sleep in a twin bed. And I just don't understand how I could like bring someone home and be like, well, I have a twin bed, so you're not sleeping over. You know what I mean? Like, I've given up. Up, Janine, given up.
I'm going to stay just quiet on my life with that, because we'll talk about that off the recording. But again, to what I will say about my life is that it's not what's considered, I guess, normal dating. But as I talked about with Oliver yesterday, it's really nobody's business what you choose to do with your dating life, sex life, lack thereof, where I'm at. It's like, it's my business. And really, ultimately, what we choose to do is nobody else's business, whether it seems normal or not. So that's all I'll say.
Right. And I mean, I don't know about you, Janine, but I will say this, especially after the pandemic, I don't think being single is the worst thing in the world, because I didn't spend the last couple of years so sick of my husband, sick of my boyfriend, sick of this, you know, everything he does. I mean, everyone I know in a relationship was not happy. No, they weren't all coupled up. It wasn't like that. They wanted their house of themselves. I know when people want my life, and that's everyone who's coupled up. So I'm like, nah, what I have is gold. What I have is platinum. I'm not, literally gold behind me. I'm not giving this up. I'm not getting in a relationship, damn it. Also, I'm not one of those people who are good in a relationship. Like I either am completely in love with you and I can't think of anything else, or I'm utterly like, I wish we weren't in the relationship and I don't know how to leave you. So it's one or the other, and neither is good for me. Neither is good for me, Janine.
So then I think you're doing fine right now.
Thank you. That's what I think. But
I think teddy bear works just fine.
Oh my gosh, she wants to do exposure therapy and make me go on like dating sites. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. You can't make me go on a dating site. I touched bugs for you, but I am not joining Tinder. Like I have some limits, lady. Oh my God.
Oh my God. I do miss the days of dating, only because I was doing jokes about dating then. And now it's so funny because I'm like, oh Jesus, I can't do this joke. This is like 12 years old. I'm like, I don't even know if this would describe dating now. No way. I'm like, nope, I don't know. Don't know.
So it's, yeah.
No, we'll let that go. All right. Well, as always, Gab, you know, you and I could just like go from topic to topic, but I will wrap it up here and just say again how excited I am that you're coming to Scranton. And it's only we're working toward the end of January. You'll be here in May, so of course I will have you back on before that. April is National Humor Month, so I'm so excited that actually the days that you're going to be here are just a couple days before World Laughter Day, which is Sunday the 7th, and you're going to be here on the 4th and 5th. So super excited about that. And I just can't wait for the people of Scranton and surrounding area to feel your vibe, because I think it's going to be electrifying.
I'm so excited. I really am. I can't thank you enough for making this happen.
Well, I'm thrilled, and I can't wait to meet you in person. It's going to be like, oh my God, I feel like I know you. So we're going to have to watch some scary shows together.
Yes. That'll be so fun. Maybe the new Evil will be out by then.
Oh my gosh, I cannot wait. I think Oliver said something about the summertime, but I can't wait for that. Is such a good show. Such a good show.
I know. Oh, I watched it so quickly. It scared me. I'm like, I don't do all I do is binge watch television. But it was that easy to binge watch, you know? Because I think I had like 3 or 4 seasons to catch up on, and I did it all like within a week.
Yeah. Oh, believe me, I'm a little embarrassed sometimes at how quickly I catch up with shows. And it's like, I had time to do that. Let's not say how I had time, but I had time. I made time. What can I say?
Oh yeah. Oh, it scares me how much I can watch. Like, oh,
I guess it's
whatever.
escapism, but whatever. I think I used to be really ashamed of how much TV I enjoy, but I do think that there's part of, I'm not going to try to elevate it, but like for creative types, don't you think there's a little bit of, I don't know, it's just escapism, but like even identifying or liking the ideas or getting ideas from it. I do feel that to some degree.
Oh, definitely. And I've read a lot with like people who've gone through trauma, enjoy shows that have traumatic elements because they're like, oh, I get this. And people who go through trauma also like to watch the same thing over and over because they don't like, they like to know what's coming. It makes them feel very relaxed. Like, oh, I know what happens, so I think it's all, hey, it's part of therapy. I think TV is part of therapy sometimes, at least for me.
Okay. All right.
I mean,
Well,
it
I
helped
think
me a
that
lot
works.
as a little kid.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, well, I think that's, it's got to have some place, right? It plays
Yeah.
a role in our lives that I think can be healthy. Let's put it that way.
Well, it can give
All
you a
right.
bounce. You know what I mean? Like when you're a kid, if you're like, well, I'm going to watch this movie, like it can take you away from whatever else is happening in the house. Cause you're like, well, I'm here. I'm with this. Me and the TV are together. I don't know what happened with you guys, at least
Oh,
that was
absolutely. Yeah, no. And I think that's probably been the case for many people, right?
yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you, Gab, as always, for your time. Again, I cannot wait. Gab will be here in Scranton area in May. So everyone listening, please mark down May 5th, that evening comedy show. I, of course, will be posting about it to the point where you're going to be like unfriending me, but please don't. Please make sure that it's going to be worth it. Trust me. Put it in your phones, mark it on your old fashioned calendars, put it in Sharpie. Please do that. As always, I really do appreciate, you have no idea how much it means to me that you listen, subscribe, and share. As I always say, I do appreciate you from the bottom of my heart and the bottom of my wine glass.